I had
could.
to do that today with my students because the school wants us to.
I'm Bruce McGee.
And I'm Steve Payne.
And we are here today with Lisa Saloy. Welcome back, Lisa.
Thank you. I'm pleasured. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Well, I got checking back in our archive. You have been on our podcast before, and it was our 40th episode. It was in our first year, and it was 8 years ago, and it just does not seem that long.
It's been a dog's
Wow.
age, as they
Yep. Wow. That's all I can say. Well, thank you for having me again.
And since then, we were at the Louisiana Studies Conference together, and you and I and Lisa Walker grabbed lunch one day. So in Natchitoches. So I guess Lisa was a popular name for our parents' generation because we had a lot of Lisas at LSU.
Interesting. Well, I'm Mona Lisa, so
right,
whole different thing.
That was different, yeah. And congratulations on being named Poet Laureate, and I think you've been doing that for a few months now.
Yeah, for a year.
Oh wow, time flies quickly, doesn't it?
Yes.
So we talked about your life in the earlier episode, but let's just catch up. How is it being Poet Laureate? What is that like?
Oh, it's been a thrill and again an honor. I'm meeting people from all over the state. I'm so touched by the attention to my work and many invitations, learning about different places in the state. So much to learn and experience. It's been a joy and an adventure, quite an adventure.
Yeah, Louisiana has all these really distinct subcultures, and you drive a few miles and it's just a totally different region. So as a public intellectual, it falls to you to go around the state giving presentations at libraries, I suppose, is a lot of it.
Yeah, some at libraries, it just depends on who invites me. For instance, I did the regional library in Lafayette, but recently at Lafayette, I did the WOW, which is, I think it's Women of Wisdom, and they partnered with the Episcopal Church there. And so it was held at the church, and 75 people came to hear me read.
Oh,
wow.
My goodness. It was a full house. And John Warner Smith came. I'm so honored that Daryl Bork introduced me. And our French poet laureate, Monsieur Ancelet, was there. And he knows me primarily as a folklorist. So it was sweet. It was extremely.
That's a real list of Louisiana luminaries, you know?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I'm glad I didn't realize all of them were there when I was reading.
Are you still teaching?
Yes, full-time at Dillard University. This is my third decade I've completed. So it's been my intellectual, cultural, and aesthetic, as well as academic home.
I started teaching at Tech in 1992. So this is my 30th anniversary. So
yeah, I started in 91 at Dillard.
Wow.
Having left LSU, I was at LSU 6.5 years.
Yeah, we were at LSU at the same time. So I guess we started our career about the same time. I was adjunct until I finished that dissertation. When you teach full time, it's hard to do a lot of writing on a dissertation. So it took a while, but I got there and slowly got on the escalator up.
Good for you.
The department or
oh no.
Cycled out.
Another person does that. So I'm glad to be faculty and focus on teaching. Although we tend to teach a lot more than the larger schools. We teach more than twice.
Right.
HBCUs. For instance, I'm teaching 5 classes now, and I taught 10 college classes last year, in addition to doing 50 talks.
Right. And as the Poet Laureate, that you're probably making a large investment of time for not a lot of money coming back at you.
Yep, it's a lot of service, but
Right.
wonderful service. And it's opening other doors. For example, even though I did 50 different talks, and some of them the beginning was online because it was still COVID.
Right.
And so I didn't start traveling really till the spring. And oh, what an adventure. But even though 50 different talks for which I had to prepare for each one, I completed a new book of poems,
Oh, good.
and it's with UNO Press. It will be out in the spring.
Awesome.
So I am really thankful. It just, by the grace of God, it just kept coming out. So,
Well, I will say that for years, basically, when we got into this project, I didn't know that much about Louisiana literature, but I came across you really early. Um,
hmm,
and I had been looking for a particular kind of poem in the Walt Whitman, uh, Carl Sandburg, Chicago style. And you had the perfect poem about Louisiana called Louisiana Log. And that alone was such a poem rooted in place. But I've been saying ever since I came across your work that you should be Poet Laureate. So I'm glad they finally
oh,
listened to me.
oh, thank you so much. That
I
means
say
the
it on
world
this
to me.
podcast pretty often. Yeah. Stephen
Thank
will,
you.
Stephen will vouch whenever your name comes up on in one of our podcasts. I'll always say she should be Poet Laureate. So,
Oh,
that,
thank
uh,
you so much. That's so
and
sweet and generous.
I did
It's
want
it's high time for it.
Oh,
that.
God bless you both.
So I wanted to get you, we wanted to focus on your poetry today. People are interested in your life. We have a double episode from 8 years ago that you went into the details, but I wanted to let you do some poetry today. And I'd like, to request Louisiana Log as
Yes.
the first poem we read, an assignment to my classes, and I'd like to be able to hear you read it and talk about it.
Okay. Should I do that now?
Yes, ma'am.
All right,
Yeah, please.
Louisiana Log. And it's dedicated to Bob Kaufman because Kaufman was a Black beat poet. If you don't know, he's born and raised in my neighborhood here
Oh,
in New
cool.
Orleans. And so out west, he wasn't known as a Southern writer. And even in my dissertation, I argue for the Southernness in his work. And he has a long poem dedicated to his grandfather that's very Louisiana. And so the Beats wrote in that Whitman-esque long line. And so that's why
Well,
it's dedicated to Bob Kaufman. So here
right,
is
because the beat
Louisiana Log.
poets, the
Yeah.
beat poets really dusted off Whitman and brought him back to prominence.
Yes. Yes. Louisiana Log for Bob Kaufman. Land south of the Mason-Dixon, of Gulf waters and Mississippi tugboat size. Land of cane, rice, and watermelon, jungle plums we call them. Po' boys, patios, patois, pecans, pecan pies, pralines, and papier-mâché masks. Place of oak tree swamps, pine and cypress, with hanging gray moss, punctuated by peacocks and pirogues. Land of Creoles, Cajuns, Black Indians, Cowans, mud bugs, catfish, and bayou crooners. Region of hot, wet air, heavy with hurricanes, honeysuckle, Irish hash, and haints ghosts. Land of black-faced Zulus, Louis Armstrong, river dragons, griots, grits and gris-gris with loup-garou sunsets. Zone of cockfights. And wait a minute, something happened. Oh,
I'm sorry. Were you
okay,
reading up
because
the thing?
I'm reading from the poem and you eclipsed my
I'm
reading.
sorry. I'm
That's
sorry. I was
okay.
going to show it to him, but we'll just listen.
Okay. I'm sorry. So should I start over or?
No. Just start
Okay.
from where you left off. We
All
are
right.
not that official.
Okay. Zone of cockfights, absinthe, tafia, anisette, and gospel groups, congree and gravel sidewalks. Land of deep fried fritters, the boot state, trying to keep its head afloat, the Long Lake state, the polluted Pontchartrain, the Tooth Fairy state, the Coon-ass state, the Red Pepper state, the home of Tabasco sauce, the U.S. precinct of Mardi Gras and street parades with great flambeaux and marching bands, the best in the Southland. Home of pelicans and cranes, roaches a finger long that fly and face you at sunup. Climate of smiling eyes and handshakes and great hugs and southern how-dos when every day's a come on out of the thunder shower day. Longitude of lanyap, yeah, you're right, and starlit nights. Meridian of Kubial, hush puppies, gumbo and deathless days, everyday hallelujahs, crawfish bisque, praying in tongues, novenas, and graveyard gifts of lilies, silver dimes, and bambula. Tropic below sea level of Scorpio and St. Joseph salutations. People who parade paint faces and forearms like irises and demons. Domain of bayous, levees, canals, alligators, bugaloosa, and wrought iron fences. Neighborhood of voodoo good luck, yam crops, and misbelieves, and the password is party and umbrellas dance. Latitude of leprosy and soybeans, clover and jasmine, mildew and dead moss. Vicinity of sidewalk cafes, boulevards, preachers and priests, with cathedrals of saints' bones and Atchafalaya. Soil of courtyards and river blues, Professor Longhair piano riffs, Zydeco and rosaries on Wednesday nights. The Mahalia Jackson and Fats Domino belt, where the saints come march, where you find your thrill. Terrain of cotton and fireflies, bumblebees and cats, tiger stripe to Siamese and alleyways, and garbage heaps of oyster shells and shrimp leavings. There's more cats per square inch here than most states. Department of Big Chief, cafe au lait and beignets, galette and couscous and milk. Sphere of classical and Dixieland jazz, rhythm and blues, Bayou blues with Baptist Catholics, and the Ku Klux Klan with jazz singers and souls crying. State of Chocolate City number 10 with fortune tellers and spiritual healers, wall geckos, muddy water, and missionaries. District of Sweat and Shade, the second line. Mississippi moonlit nights, Saturday night suppers in the backyard, the sanctioned speakeasies. Confines of Thibodeau, Chapatulas, Homa, Tunica, and Louisiana red and wingtips. Native land of jive and jambalaya, the Crescent City, the city cared for God and remembered for truth.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I like the way that, and this is what I was saying about what I was hunting, something that could complement Sandberg's poem about Chicago, but be about Louisiana. This is so totally grounded in New Orleans and, South Louisiana really in general. And I like the way you use all of our vocabulary, our specialized New Orleans, South Louisiana vocabulary. So why don't you talk a little bit about writing it and about what it means to you?
Well, even though I dedicated this to Bob Kaufman, it's for all of us because we have a unique state. We were the original West word movement of America.
Yeah.
And we were Spanish and French and Spanish. And we are also Caribbean North.
Right.
We have had, and even post Katrina, we've had many more Latinos.
Yeah.
We've always been a composite of many cultures. I mean, this was the German coast. The Irish came here to dig the channels. And we've had a conglomerate of cultures, and the Italians with their sausages and oh my God, the St. Joseph's days and the praying altars. So we are such a unique place. And I wanted to celebrate all of that. And I hope that
the lieutenant governor's office the lieutenant governor's office is missing the point when I keep saying this. We need to be billing Louisiana as the state where American multiculturalism was born.
Hello. I love that.
I mean, really,
you should send him that line. Well, maybe I can do that. Maybe I can send a note because it was Governor John Bell Edwards that selected my work.
Well, that was
and
good.
He loved the Louisiana in it. So maybe he will appreciate that.
Yeah, so your poetry is so rooted in place. And there are poets who write just kind of tone poems about whatever. I mean, it's all valid. It's all good.
Mhm.
But yours is so rooted in Louisiana. It's like an education about Louisiana in these poems.
Oh, thank you. I just I love it. And when I left to get away from just grieving for my mother after she passed, my dad's grief, and his drunk friends and the Black Creole women in the neighborhood says, time for you to go. So I ended up visiting my sister and staying, and who made me go to college. God bless her. She's my
That was
angel.
in the Northwest,
That
right?
was in the Northwest. And
You were
so
as far away from
have,
Louisiana as you could get and stay in the
yep.
country.
But what did I do on the West Coast? I met Southerners who were just a generation, not some of them current, because there were a lot of military bases in the Northwest. There was Fort Lewis Army. There was in California, and there was McCord Air Force Base in the Northwest. There was also the Navy base up there. So I don't know if you know this, but before Hurricane Katrina, there were more Black men from the military, from New Orleans than any other city in the country.
I did not know that, but it makes a lot of sense because we
Yeah,
had a very large contingent in the Union Army during the Civil War.
that's true.
That this was where they pioneered the Black troops. You were freed from the Southerners for being contraband of war, and then a lot of them wanted to go and fight.
So
Yeah.
their patriotism, and also, and I pointed this out at a meeting that Bruce and I went to last week or week before last. It was an organizers meeting, and I said Louisiana is an oddity among the Deep South states. If you look at, say, from Georgia or really South Carolina over to Texas, we function like a border state in that or between 7,000 and 8,000 Anglo Louisianans fought for the Union, which is
Oh,
remarkable. Yeah,
interesting.
so we had about 14,000 Black Louisianans fighting for the Union, about 8,000, 7,000, 8,000 white Louisianans, which is pretty amazing when you consider our
That's
geography
impressive.
and our culture. Yeah,
That's right. And we had less people
yeah,
than in
yeah.
the northern areas that had more cities and more urban areas. And so once I got to California, there were the Marines in Southern California. So a lot of those families were recently Southern, and many of them stayed on the West Coast. And so here I am, a young poet, finding my voice after having lost my memory. And Southerners said, yes, yes. And you remind me of what we left and what we loved and what we took for granted. But even the people in Lafayette said that. Some of the people had been from New Orleans or grew up here. And they said, thank you for giving me my childhood back and those terms that we knew and loved. And so I'm so thankful that people appreciate that.
Like the alliteration in the line griot, grits, gris, and lougarou, and it's all the G's, but these are words you hear down here that
Yes.
just these really specific, weird or unique. I know it's weird, but like you say, coming from all these different languages through languages, the word Creole, I think
Yes.
came from the Portuguese word meaning to be born. And it goes back to Creole, a Latin word, but then it goes from Portuguese to Spanish to French to English.
Right.
It's
Right.
just ping ponged all around
Right.
with a lot of different spellings and a lot of different meanings over the
Right.
years. But
Yeah, because
I
the
always have
etymology,
feelings.
the earliest meaning was determined to name the descendants of Black mixed enslaved Blacks born
Mhm.
in the New World.
Right.
And then whites who were later were so attracted to the Creole culture created. And they said, well, I'm native born, I'm Creole.
I'm
So
Creole too.
yeah, so there are a lot of whites who are Creole as well. So, but in the majority of the world, it means part Black, but it's different every place. And I was reminded of that recently on a fellowship to study with the United Negro College Fund Andrew Mellon Foundation. And we were looking at, well, I was particularly looking at Blacks and Indigenous here and the retentions. And so that'll be in an essay in a future book, a book that's coming, I hope sooner than later, on Black Creole culture here. And I was looking at cultural retentions, but Creole is very similar in Martinique or in places, even in South America. It has different names, but that Creolization occurred in the New World. And so We
There
share a
are
lot of
still,
similarity with many places in the Americas.
there are still Creoles of color in New Orleans, which is the traditional term in New Orleans, who don't want to be called African Americans. It's like, excuse me?
Well, my forever president, President Barack Obama, is an African American. His dad is African.
Right?
He is not a descendant of mixed enslaved Africans.
No,
So his wife is.
right.
So a lot of intellectuals, not everybody agrees, but she's a Black American and he's an African American.
Oh, right.
And so I say Black Creole because I want people to know I'm Black American, but I'm very specifically Black Creole because we have such a unique culture here. And wherever I visited, no matter if it's New York or DC or other places out west and even in the Midwest, Black people say, yeah. So we're more alike than we are different, but they recognize that the South is just a little bit more different.
Oh, yeah. Well, and we aren't like North Louisiana is the most southern part of this state. You know, it's like the general South, but South Louisiana, it's different from the rest of the South. It's not like Southern culture. Are you familiar with the two-man show Inside the Creole Mafia by Mark Broriard and Roger Smith?
No.
Okay, so they did this out, and they're from the LA diaspora of New Orleans. You know, there's New Orleans in Los Angeles. I mean,
oh, interesting.
Was it Mark we talked to, Stephen?
Yeah.
We were just getting to chatting, and you found out a lot of interesting stuff when you get to chatting with your guests. And he said he had sung at a lot of weddings out there, you know, and they're still Catholic, and they still did. And I said, so do you ever sing Ave Maria? And he said he had the sheet music that every time he sang Ave Maria, he would put the name and the date so he would remember. And he had filled up one sheet music, all the blank spots on it, and he had started on his second sheet, filling in names. That's how much he sung Ave Maria. But you know, you cannot have a New Orleans wedding without Ave Maria. So anyway, they got into all the terminology that was used, especially in the old days, but you still hear it some today: quadroon, octoroon, mulatto, griff. They've got a little rap about it, and they say a mulatto is what we call a African.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And quadroon is what we call a quarter black. And they just, once you finish the show, you never forget those words again. You know, they've just really explained kind of a lot of the history of New Orleans that lives in our vocabulary. Okay,
so please share that source and the
I will. I'm going to share it with you right now.
Okay, I would love that. I don't know it at all.
It's great. I mean, the best part of our project has been meeting people and getting to know all the interesting, like I'd have never done this if we didn't have a podcast and we need an hour a week, you know. Here it comes in your chat.
Okay.
So yeah, and they've got a YouTube video.
You know, not only are some of the ethnicities very much bound to a place, but the dialects are. I mean, they posted something the other day, some people that I know on Facebook, this thing out of the Times-Picayune, or I think it was out of that paper, may have been out of the Baton Rouge Advocate, but it was about being Southern and how they determine it. And really the whole thing is kind of arbitrary, to be honest. But they were talking about various markers. And I think one of the things may have been the use of the term Southern. And I used a term that is it's only confined to North Louisiana, maybe to South Arkansas. And I know for sure to East Texas, but it was the term goat roper. And Bruce knows what that is. Mona Lisa, I don't know if you know what it is, but
nope.
It's an insult.
But it's redneck.
Yeah, or drugstore cowboy. It's related to that, but I found out that's confined just to the I-20 corridor over into East Texas and maybe up to, say, El Dorado, Arkansas area. So it's very localized to this area.
Wow.
And
so if you're not from around here, you won't have heard it before.
I came across a new term just last week, a really old term, maybe 200 years old, You know, we have redneck as a term for people like me who grew up, you know, well, before my time, they grew up following, you know, on a farm, and they're bent down all day and their necks are sunburnt. But there's a French term, dos brûlés, which means burned back, which was a term they used to refer to us in New Orleans.
Dos brûlés.
Yeah, I'll type it in.
But
Like
what did you say that
creme brulee.
French? Oh, like creme brulee. Oh,
Yeah,
that's funny. But what was the word you said that before that? Don brûlée.
redneck.
Oh,
So the redneck is the, you know, white person who stays out in the field all day and their neck is red. But dos brûlés is burned back because of the same thing, right? You've been out and you've got this deep sunburn. So you're dos brûlés. Isn't that great?
interesting.
So when somebody like
Interesting.
me would come
I
floating down
wonder
the
how
river,
what's the age of that term? Do you know
what's that? According
the
to
age of
George
that the French
Washington,
term?
according to George Washington Cable, it's a Creole song from early in the Creole French song, early in the 1800s. But it was George Washington Cable, so he might have been lying. So it's at least 100 years old.
Ah, so you think I think he was pretty good about capturing what he heard and what he found.
Okay, well that makes me feel better.
Yeah, he was pretty good about a lot of stuff that we
I
wouldn't
was
have
wondering
otherwise.
because
Yeah.
there is a I heard some African American guy talking about this. He may have been the guy Booker that's running up in Kentucky, but I don't know who it was. But he was not from this part of the South, or what we call the Deep South, what used to be called the Lower South. He was from the Upper South, maybe Kentucky, maybe even West Virginia. But he was referencing labor history to use the term redneck. He said it came from the idea of tying a red kerchief or a red handkerchief around your neck to honor. I don't know if it was the people killed at Blair Mountain or where, but it has something to do with labor history.
Mm.
And so you had even black workers dressing in these red kerchiefs with their, around their neck, hence the term redneck. And the red was meant to represent the blood of those people killed in those labor struggles. So again, I don't really know the origin of the term at all. I don't know where it comes from, to be honest.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share this just so you can see and the folks can see. Okay, how do we do that? There. Okay, so here is the original poem. It was a song, I believe. Chanson Creole, chanson. And so it's talking about Cayetano
Creole.
Circus out on Congo Square. There used to be a permanent circus on Congo Square. But
a permanent circus?
Yeah, Cayetano, isn't that great? Cayetano was the second circus in the United States. He split off from the first one and made his way slowly down the Mississippi. Once he got to New Orleans, it was a lot easier to stay than to go back up the Mississippi. This is real like 1816. And so they just set up on Congo Square and stayed there till he died of yellow fever. So he was a real guy. I know that much is real.
Interesting. Now, the beginning of this says, Mr. Cable kindly lent me his own collection. Who is he addressing? Who is that to?
This is Coleman. What was his first name? His middle name was Head. Anyway, he was.
That's a guy whose book we just picked up.
Yeah, this is a brand new 120-year-old, 140-year-old book we just put on our website. So this is the first time this poem has been put on the internet in like a readable HTML version ever.
Awesome.
So yeah, he wrote. A lot of this book is collected from other journalists, and he does a lot of different articles about this, that, and the other about Louisiana. But then he has his Cable's translation. But see, Burntbacks is poor white. So I love terms, like I'm a word guy, and I can tell you.
Yes, indeed. Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. So Cable, I mean, his novels are fiction, so they're not historical record, but he does capture some interesting things.
Well, and you'd be interested in this chapter. He has a whole chapter. It's just whatever he wanted to write about New Orleans. But he has a whole chapter walking around town describing the scenes in George Washington Cable's stories. And that's why we have the poem. So, hey, we spent a lot of time on Royal Street 150 years ago. And some of those buildings you can look at now on Google Maps. It's kind of cool. They're still there. They still look kind of like they did.
Yeah, they do. So our Vucare is pretty. We've got buildings that are over 150 years old.
Yeah. So Cable, he does something that I like about your poetry, and let's get back to you. But that rooted in place, that very specific, like if you want to really understand Cable, you need to walk around the French Quarter. And even learn a lot about Louisiana culture, because it is, he does try to make his details pretty accurate. He'll do something like, he'll make, the Baroness de Pontaba a little bit older, so this guy in his book could have asked her to marry him, when in real life should have been like 8 years old at the time. But they're kind of close to being, they're real people. They show up in his stories, kind of going through the creative process. So yeah. Okay, well,
and this is what writers do. They often fictionalize or tell tales that are rooted in reality.
Yes.
Because truth is often stranger than fiction. That's an oldie but goodie.
Yeah, they're trying to reveal a truth that's not. Bruce and I've talked about this. It's not necessarily historically true, but it's humanistically true, or spiritually true.
Yes, and to me, that's what literature does.
Yes,
it's the human history.
Exactly.
Right. And you could make a whole, like, if we started footnoting this Louisiana Log. Are there any high points you want to mention about the Louisiana Log poem before we head on off to? Like, how'd you go about picking out? Was it more the sound of the words, or?
No, what came to me, what came up, came out. And of course, I juxtapose things. Everything doesn't go together. Somebody said, wow, that's ironic. That was the point. That we are quite ironic in because even that G line, the griot is a storyteller, but grits and grits, our hominy from corn, and then gree is a spell.
Right.
Loup Garou sunset. So I was after making poetry, but while capturing who we are, what we do, and how we do it, which is so unique. And I love all those words. And like you, I wanted to celebrate those great words.
Yeah, it's the music of the language.
Yes.
This is the people's language. I think most kids growing up are encouraged speak right. You're supposed to speak right, and there's this standard formal English we're supposed to speak. But when we get out of class, we revert to whatever it is everybody else around us is saying. Like it's a come on out of the thunder shower day. This has been the month, this August. We're having the daily thunder. I think it's getting cloudy now. Yeah, we might have a thunder shower before it's over with.
That's us.
And I love those showers, because otherwise it is unbearably so hot. And you get a shower, it cools down to 80 degrees, which 80 degrees is not bad when you've been out in the hunt, but it's so muggy. Bring the groceries in, you have to take a shower after, because you're drenched.
Yes, you do. Yes, you
And
do. But we do it so well.
yeah, Kubian is one of our old recipes for fish, or a
Yes.
bunch of recipes.
Yeah, stewed fish. To stewed sheephead, to be specific.
Really?
Originally, yeah, originally, because in our community, in the Black community, we had to, just like soul food, this was part of Black Creole soul food.
Mhm.
So we couldn't afford the whole fish, but we could buy the head because it was so big, it had all this meat. So my dad would buy a bunch of sheep heads and we whip up some coubillon, and we loved it. And of course, it was a lot of fish in it, but boy, that stewed fish was just sweet, and he loved it till all his days.
Well, they used every part of the animal, and I've gotten in the habit of throwing a ham hock in my red beans, and
Flavor.
that's it. You can't beat ham hock and red beans.
That's right.
But that was seen as poor people's food. My people,
That's
that's
right.
how my people ate. Not the
Yeah, we
Creole
ate the
version.
what other people wouldn't buy,
Right. Yeah.
but they would still charge us.
You know, they're
But
happy to get that money.
yep.
I remember when I was a kid, and we were there at my grandmother's at Christmas, and they brought a pig out and shot him in the head,
Mm,
and then hung it up and dressed it. And that's the only time I've ever seen it done old-fashioned way.
mm.
But my grandmother and granddad, they had 6 kids. They ate every bit of that pig growing up.
Yep.
They didn't waste any of it. You would.
We couldn't afford to waste anything. All I know
Mm,
is we always had food to eat. I just didn't
Oh,
know it was the bottom of the bucket,
right.
but it all tastes so good. I
they
didn't
said
know we
that
were
about
poor.
granddad, about my dad's dad, that he was so tight that and so frugal. They said that he'd use every part of that pig, and if he could have got the squeal, he'd have got that too.
So
Oh, that's
The pig
priceless.
squeal, yeah. They
I
they
would
were poor
just.
people coming out of Mississippi and moved over here. His people,
Wow.
my granddad's
That
people
is
were
priceless.
from somewhere up in that hill country near Tennessee, and then they moved into the Delta, and eventually he landed over here in North Louisiana. But they
Wow.
grew up poor, well, they were farming people, so they knew also how to take all the food and use it. Like just this happens every so often. Somebody will be standing next to me in one of the groceries around here, and we'll be standing by the sweet potatoes, and they can't find a good sweet potato. I said, you know how to find a good one, don't you? Well, they'll give some line, and I say, look for the one that's got the most orange or reddish orange flesh. That's the best ones because they have the higher sugar content. See, they didn't
Mhm.
know that, but I'm the son and great grandson, multiple generations back, of farmers. They knew
All
that.
right now. All right
Yeah,
now.
farmers know that kind of stuff. Just like
Yeah.
with your green leafy vegetables, if they're raggedy looking on the ends,
Hello.
if they're wilted, you don't buy those. You buy the ones that are still nice and green and crisp. And the
Hmm.
deeper the green, the more nutritious they are too.
Yep.
But again, farmers know that.
Yes, indeed. And the same way, growing up with not much, with a kawan, my dad would stew swamp turtle. And in those days, you could go and dig the turtles out, but one big turtle could feed a whole family. And so they would slice the neck, and there was a little purple thing that was the gland, and you couldn't pierce that gland or you'd it would poison all the meat.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
right.
And so there's 21 meat flavors in the shell, and then you stew all the parts of it, even the feet.
Do
And my dad
you
would save the eggs for my mother because that was supposed to bring beauty and
do you
youth.
do you simmer the shell and get the flavor out of it like you do bones?
No, they would shuck all the meat out of the shell,
Right, but what
and
did you
then
do with the
polish it
shell?
for
Um,
they would use it for the garden or just something to display. And
it was a
depending on
bowl.
how big, the smaller ones were easier to do that. With the big ones, those were more when I was younger. It seemed like the older I get, they were smaller and smaller. And then we were forbidden from even catching them because we didn't have access to the coastline near the swamps because rich people had bought up the land.
Oh, of
And you
course,
couldn't
yeah.
just go and catch kawan. But that
Mhm.
was a real big spring event. The whole family would come for a backyard party. And that dad would, just like the pig, hang it upside down so the blood would come out. And that
Exactly.
sucker would kick for 3 days.
Oh,
He would still
man.
kick, and the head would
Oh,
snap
my goodness.
for a long time. So as children, oh my God, that was an event. We couldn't wait. And of course, we shucked oysters and like that,
Right.
but that was the spring event.
Did
Stewing
you
cod.
did you go catch crawfish out in the ditches around? Like,
No, the boys did that. As a girl, I had to stay inside,
all
and
right,
they
they're
gave
very
us the
very gender
domestic stuff to do. But
specific,
I learned
right?
how to sew and make beautiful things. But the boys did that kind of stuff. But we had to clean everything and cook everything.
Right.
But although my one brother, he is a really good cook. He can cook. He can.
Well, New Orleans, the kitchen is kind of open to whoever wants to learn how to cook. Last night, um, uh, Rachel and I swap out cooking different nights, and she was going to cook last night, but she had a late meeting, and then she fell asleep. So, but she had all the stuff for. Oh, it's like a taco, but it's flat. you know, you, it's 2 tacos, and then you put stuff in between it. Anyway, I grabbed the kid and say, okay, well, let's make us some of these, and we did. And you know, I'm trying to teach him because he's 15 and a half. He'll be out the door in a few years, and I don't want him to starve. So, okay,
Yeah.
here's how you make. What is the name of that? Stephen, do you know what I'm talking about?
Was it quesadillas maybe?
Quesadilla, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
We
those are
made some,
delicious.
but yeah, they were great, and it's not hard either. You know, you can start with something
Cool.
simple like that. But
It's more poor people's food.
it takes me all day to cook roast beef or red beans.
Yeah, it takes all day. It's a
Well, I
commitment of
chop up.
time.
Yeah, it's a slow food. It's
Yeah,
supposed to start on a Monday morning, and you
that's
come
right.
in and you smell it through the whole house.
Yes, it's a sweet smell. And the great thing is you have leftovers.
Yes. Well, I make a, oh, hold on. So can you see my,
No.
I'm gonna have to turn off the background.
Yeah. I love the background, by the way, though. It's beautiful.
It's great because I can be anywhere and it looks really official.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're about to see what my dining area looks like.
Okay.
Oh, crud. Oh, here we go. Choose. Here we go. Choose background 9. All right.
Oh, lovely.
So now
Oh, wow.
I fill that thing up with red beans.
Wow, that's formidable.
When COVID was getting started and I was down here more, most places were closed and only Walmart was open, and only for a couple hours. And so I looked at all the Walmarts in New Orleans and found one 16-quart stock pot in stock. And I've used that thing. You know, I like to freeze stuff and then you can thaw it out. Like,
Yeah.
put the red beans out on Monday morning when we get through with work and teaching over Zoom. They're ready to eat. And well, you
Yes,
have to heat them
indeed.
up. But yeah, I love that. So bambula, why don't you explain what the bambula was and is?
Okay, now that's very special. Okay, wait, I'm looking for the line because I lost it.
The one that starts with meridian. You have longitude.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Now, oh boy, I'm being called told us one thing. Okay, sorry. Anyway.
I could actually share it. I'm getting a little more used to being back on Zoom now. So here we have the line. Can you see it?
Yes, got it. Yeah, no, I was just distracted because I got a text from school.
Ah.
All right. So we Okay,
Nothing
so
good.
New Orleans sold more Africans than any place in the South. And so the bambula is several things. It's a drum, an African drum that we inherited and brought with us. And it's here and in the Caribbean, so throughout the West Indies, and used for voodoo ceremonies, incantations, and it was definitely a Congo Square staple.
And it was
So
also a dance, wasn't it?
it was also a dance. And so, well, people danced at the drumming. So when we say bambula, we mean the drumming and the dancing.
Right.
So that's kind of all inclusive. And this was the only place during enslavement that Blacks were allowed to publicly congregate. And then because there were so many of us, after worship, there you go, there you go. And this is the famous.
Is a very famous, if I can get it to work.
Yeah, and they're doing the bambula, but it's the drumming and the dancing together. So when we say the bambula, we're talking about the drumming and the dancing. And so we inherited that from West Africa, like a lot of the food we eat. From kubion to gumbo, which is the Bantu word for okra.
But they've paved it now.
Bamboo.
It's called Armstrong Park.
Right, but it's still Congo Square, and it's still holy ground.
Yeah, you still go there on Sundays, and they're still doing the drums, and some people dance. So
yes,
it continues to this day.
Yes, and the Ashe Cultural Center has an annual Ma'afa celebration, which is a remembrance. And I was honored by them this year to be the Grand Griot. And they had people from every faith imaginable. And their principals, thank you. And they shared, there were dancers, musicians. Oh my God, it was wonderful. And so I was the Grand Griot. So the only thing about it, everybody was too long. By the time I did my thing, everybody was hot and sweating bricks. But I just wanted to share what I prepared, because I figure I'm the feature. I shouldn't just do 5 minutes and leave. So people were just tired, but they stayed with me, and I'm so thankful. And then there's tours after. They go and follow the areas where Black people during enslavement, like St. Augustine Church which was the first official Black Catholic parish in the nation, and in Treme. Yeah. And so where Black people were sold in the quarters, many spaces. Oh my God, it's powerful, just a powerful event.
Right.
And they've done it about 20 some years.
What was the name of the event again?
Ma'afa.
Ma'afa.
Mafaa. Ma'afa.
And it's at the Ashantes.
The Ashe Cultural Center holds it at Congo Square every year.
And
the beginning of July.
And I can't draw the meaning.
Ma'afa.
What does Ashe mean?
Ashe, it's like saying amen. It's an affirmation.
I've heard it.
Ashe. Now, interestingly, on the West Coast, one of my students says A-S-E with an accent, but we say S-H-E, A-S-H-E, Ashe, amen. It's an affirmation.
Right.
Is that
Square,
is that considered a state historic site? Because it probably should be declared that if it's not.
Oh, it is historic. It is historic in New Orleans.
Or is there like a plaque, like one of the plaques?
There's a plaque. There's definitely. There's a historic plaque there.
I guess there are probably reasons having to do with homeless people or maybe vandalism, but they keep it locked up except when something's going on there.
Right. Because the homeless would take over.
Right. And
because it's spacious. It's spacious.
So latitude of leprosy, of course, that's talking about the infamous, what was the name of the leper colony outside of town?
Yes.
I think it was near Baton Rouge. Stephen, do you remember?
Was it? Oh, but yeah, is it at Carville?
Carville, that's it.
That's right, Carville. Mm-hmm.
Chafalaya is a river. Cafe au lait, there we go, baby, and beignets.
Yep.
Of course, cafe au lait is coffee with milk. Beignets are.
It's a fritter.
Yeah, it's a special New Orleans fried treat that I can't eat anymore.
Oh, yeah, it's a fritter. And in the neighborhood and in my family, we did it with peaches in it during season, or just depend
Ooh.
on what fruit it is. And in the Caribbean, they do it with crab. So my grandmother would put crab in it sometimes. So it just depends on
A
the season.
savory
Oh,
one.
oh, it could be savory or sweet.
Hmm. What is galet? Is that milk?
Galette is pan-fried shortening bread.
Oh, okay,
And
cool.
speaking of being poor, before we could afford sliced bread, that was our bread.
And what's the difference between that and couscous? Because that's
Couscous
something.
is a rice. That's a rice dish.
Okay,
Yeah, couscous is rice.
but it's also pan fried, if I remember.
Yeah, yeah, but it's rice. It's made with
Um,
rice.
of course, KKK very popular here with people like David Duke still today. You
Don't
know,
make me puke, but yes.
well, I mean,
Don't make me puke. It's David Duke.
There you go.
it's
He was
kind
crying
of
out for that one.
Uh-huh, sure
he's still,
was.
it's kind of one of those weird quirks of history that after World War II and the advent of the GI Bill, that white people were encouraged to move out to the suburbs and build houses and get out of the apartments, and so they did, and most of them went out of the parish, and so a lot of the traditional racism of New Orleans kind of moved to Jefferson Parish, and that's where you'll find David Duke, not New Orleans.
Yep, not in New
And
Orleans,
of
thank
course,
God.
Chocolate City number 10, that was a post Katrina remark by
Yes,
Mayor, what was his, Nagin.
Nagin, Ray Nagin.
And, people gave him shit for it, but the Republicans were trying to ethnically cleanse New Orleans. They wanted to
That's
get
right.
black people out and not allow them back. And he stood
That's
up and said,
exactly right. They
we are going
tried to Disneyfy New Orleans and really erase the great cultures that we produced, that all the tourists come for, and that we enjoy on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. You can't Disneyfy New Orleans. You can't replace that. It
it
took
would,
centuries to form.
well, and I've got to, they've been trying to reform New Orleans for almost 300 years, and it just never.
Reform, really? Hey, people come here because of the welcoming nature. When you go to West Africa, everything's a Kwaba, welcome. It's just like meeting people at the bus stops, total strangers, and you might not see them again, but you have a wonderful conversation. Everybody's so friendly here. And
That's
it's because of it's our nature.
I go out into especially in the French Quarter because you're on foot, and I'll
Mhm,
just
mhm.
stop and talk to people, and I record on my cell phone, and sometimes we'll do a little 5-minute thing for our we call them postcards from Louisiana, and who are you? What are you doing? And it's great. Um,
Yeah.
so wingtips, that's a kind of shoe, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
For
what
a
the
younger,
brothers wore when they were dressed up, and it's two-toned usually, but not always. But they were called wingtips. And when a brother steps out in
Sounds
his
very 1940s, you know.
hey, let me tell you, our brother John Warner Smith, the former Poet Laureate, I've seen him in wingtips.
He still wears them.
it's a
Does that make
classic.
you think of those old films where they would show the swing bands, you know, and the instrumentalists
Yes.
were up on stage
Yes.
and they
Yes.
were
And my
dressed to the
uncles.
nines? Yeah.
Yeah. My uncle, one of my uncles is a crooner and a piano player. So yep, they love their wingtips.
You gotta have style. That's one thing about New Orleans. People have style here.
That's right.
They want to present a certain way, and they're different styles. There's a bunch of there's the seersucker, old
Yeah.
man kind of outfit, but you see young people. It's maybe the only place you see 20-year-olds in seersucker. It's just.
Well, this is where it came from. Haspel Brothers seersucker suits were made right in my
Mhm.
neighborhood in the 7th Ward. All the Black Creole women sewed there, my aunts, the neighbors. And that was some of the first things I learned how to make with seersucker, the scraps. They would give away the scraps. And
Oh,
so we could use that for the dolls' clothes and the clothespin holders. Remember when we used to hang clothes out on the
yes,
line?
Yes.
So we would make dresses to
clothes
go
to
over
dry
the
in your-
hanger. Yeah, and they had box pleats, or that's how I learned how to sew.
How
But
did they ever get
seersucker,
anything to dry on a New Orleans clothesline? It's like, it's,
well, not in the rainy season, but you had to put it up and pull it down when the rain come. You had to move fast
oh
when
yeah,
you felt that drizzle because you knew it was going to be a thunder shower.
that's right. It's
And
coming.
we see it coming a block away.
Yeah, one of the early advertisements for seersucker was you could walk out into the water in it and walk back out and it would dry out and be kind of okay, which as much as we were talking about people sweating in New Orleans, nowadays people dress kind of cool, but people had full suits on back in the day, and seersucker was kind of the beginning of let's get rid of that North European black that everybody was wearing and wear something tropical so
Yeah.
it doesn't kill us.
And it allowed you to breathe. It was
Yeah.
breathing. So it was light, although you could structure it and tailor it. So it was much lighter.
Lately, I've been getting into linen. I really like linen.
Oh, yeah.
This is a Hawaiian shirt, but same idea. It's a tropical
Yeah.
weight.
Yeah.
The thing I like about Hawaiian shirts is they're very forgiving for, they don't show moisture that much. So if you're getting a rain or, do sweat, then it doesn't, you don't look like you're sweating.
Yeah. Yeah.
For an old fat
They
guy.
wick the moisture away, don't they, somehow or another?
Okay,
I'm
well,
sorry?
I did not
Don't
mean to.
don't they wick the moisture away somehow or
Yes,
another?
yes, they're very good about that.
Mm.
So I didn't mean to spend the whole time on
Textile.
Louisiana Log, but do you have some other poems you've picked out for us?
Yes, I do. I have one I thought you would enjoy since you like that one.
And I think you need to go, so we
soon, yeah. This is called New Orleans, a Neighborhood Nation.
Oh, perfect. Yes.
Okay. New Orleans, a neighborhood nation. Possums sleep middle of the road sometimes, invade soggy walls after hurricanes dump heavy rains, hide in clothes closets and eat through my canvas book bags. Must taste like peanut butter and strawberry jam. The pages of wisdom spread like confetti on the floor. 10,000 spiders live in my neighborhood. What grows wild sticks like thorns. What crawls will bite you red and blue. Roaches spread wings past dusk, invade door jams. We grow, eat, and love okra. There ain't no proper gravy without a little slime. Veggie slimes are us Black folks on this planet. We know folks backwards and forwards, translate to every little thing, nothing forgotten. Y'all is singular, plural, and a sweet sound in our ears. Festivals are us, shrimp, satsumas, tomato, rice, crawfish, blues, and jazz. We throw hissy fits in a heartbeat. Find cayenne, salt, onion, celery, parsley, and thyme on yard birds, baked, fried, or stewed, even on the other white meat, anything that swims in a bayou, lake, or river. Catfish, grouper, redfish, crab, sheephead, cayenne. Out of bread? Whip up galette or deep fried fritters with ripe bananas or a pocket of plantains in season. Just honey to taste. When weather dips below 70, not too low, our winters without cold, then it's gumbo time. Okra, seafood, or beans de jour, red beans, white beans, butter beans, crowder peas, plus black-eyed peas, the eyes of God on us. Well, we still make hucklebucks in summer, make suppers to raise bucks for folks stuck between a rock and a hard place, pass potato salad over a fence for a backyard barbecue with hot beer and hurricane cocktails at sunset in yards or on galleries glad for time measured in minutes.
I think you and our former Poets Laureate need to come up with a Poets Laureate cookbook, because you could have a poem like that and then 2 or 3 of the recipes of all that great food you're talking about. Most of our podcasts end up with me getting hungry and we're talking about food, but you actually brought up food.
Well, it's that time of day.
I know, right? Thank you so much. This has been great, and I'm sorry you have to go into work. I know that I can tell from experience that nothing good happens at a university after 3 on a Friday afternoon. So
Well, we do have good parties and they serve good
okay.
food.
Well, yes, you're in New Orleans, so you can have a party. That's true.
Yeah, and my academic affairs vice president is leaving, so we want to give her a good send off.
All
Oh,
right.
okay.
Well, a toast from me, and thank you so much. This has been great, and so much
My pleasure.
congratulations on being the Poet Laureate. I can't think of anybody that deserves it more or
real
better
real quickly
representative of
before
Louisiana culture.
before you get away
Thank
from
you.
us,
Okay.
what do kids say? Because we had Ava Level Heyman say some of this about reading for kids.
Oh,
So what do the kids say when you read, and they're say teenagers and so forth in the audience?
actually, they just like it. They said, "Oh, we have some of that." Or, I mean, and I've been everywhere from St. Francisville to, oh my God, No Man's Land or Manny.
Yeah.
And Lafayette, and they just like it. We share a lot in culturally. And even though certainly there's a difference in Cajun versus Creole, but some of that over the years has blended and
Right.
has been borrowed. For instance, there's a seafood place that says Cajun and Creole in New Orleans.
Right.
And no,
Well,
you got that a
everybody
little wrong.
fixes red beans. I mean, that's all
Yes,
over the state.
exactly. So there's a lot of sharing. So I haven't had them really question so much as they just said, oh,
Well,
yeah. Kind of surprised that I would talk about the little things that they recognize but take for granted.
Stephen and I have been saying for years that we could really use more Louisiana literature in the Louisiana classroom because, my kid came home with the kite flyer or kite runner or something. It was set in Afghanistan. I'm saying, great, that's fine. But where's something from Louisiana that would speak to where they are? And that Louisiana Log or the one you just read or any of your other poems, they're about Louisiana. Like you say, the little details of Louisiana, and it makes them interested. And you know what interested kids do? They read and they remember.
Yes.
And this
It
becomes
personalizes the literature and the verse. And we need to get you, or somebody needs to get you scheduled to do some readings along the I-20 corridor. Come up here to the Hill Country.
Cool.
Have you been up north yet?
Well, north, but where north? So
Yeah,
I haven't
anywhere
been
along
every
I-20.
place.
Yeah, anywhere along I-20, say from Monroe to Shreveport.
Mainly.
Okay, so I haven't been to Shreveport, but when Royce Duplessis, who is our congressman from this district, he gave me a proclamation and brought me to Baton Rouge. And the representative from Shreveport said, we've got to bring you. So we haven't done that yet, but I assume this is the year.
So many places to go. Well, thank you, Mona Lisa. It's been
Yeah, we
so
appreciate
great catching up.
Thank you. It's my pleasure and honor to be here to join you guys again after 8 years.
I know.
And I'm
been
so
too long.
proud of you for your continuity. And I want to bless you and just give you great kudos for going forward in your new projects. I'm looking forward to all of that.
Thanks.
You were episode 40 and 41, and now we're close to 500. So that's how many episodes.
Yeah, we'll cross 500.
Outstanding.
I guess by the end of the year, Bruce, is that right, or the beginning of next
so
year?
We may stream this in Women's History Month. We've already filled up Black History Month, but you're kind of the crossover. You do both, so we're going to get you in there between February and March.
Cool.
So this may be 500 by then.
Wow. I'm deeply thankful for you guys, for everything that you are and everything that you do, and for promoting Louisiana work.
Thank you.
Because we are all this is why we're here. This is what we love. So thank you for joining the love and a group hug.
That's right.
However virtual.
Well, are you coming up to Natchitoches in a couple of weeks for the?
Yes.
Oh, we'll
I'll
see
be there soon. And we're ironing out details, but yes, at Northwestern.
Right. Yes, we go every year. So we'll see you there then. See you.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be there again this year.
Great.
Bye.
I will love it. Okay. Bye-bye. God bless y'all.
You too.
Thank you.
Take care.